the infant will for the first time start to realize that I'm separate from the rest of the world. As an infant, up until that time, things it's all one. For the infant is all one. There's no separation. But at some point between 5 and 12 months old, the baby or the infant starts to realize, there's a difference between me and my mom. Or of course they don't have the verbal language to use that, but the idea, the concept is they recognize there's a separation, and that separation has a strong effect on the nervous system of the infant. Is a threat to their survival, a huge threat to the survival, for the first time realizing that there's a separation here. And through that threat to the survival, the nervous system goes into fear mode, extreme fear mode, threat to survival. The infant makes a pre-verbal cognition, which then later on becomes reinforced with language as the child goes through and learns language, and it will be reinforced with language later on. But that first conclusion then will be unworthiness, incompleteness, imperfection. And you can read more about that, as I said, in the ebook, which you'll get free access to after the webinar. So why then, by changing the compensator, which is what most of self-help is trying to do, is not working? Well, driver is the first conclusion, hence has most power. The compensator is born out of the driver. In fact, as you can see, the number 3 is a holographic unit. They're intertwined with each other. So by trying to fixing or changing, improving here, all you're doing is reinforcing this, and that's not going to work. And hence, this is the reason why, when I ask the question, can it be that 99% of self-help approaches do not work to the extent I want to? And this is the reason why, because we're trying to make a shift, a change, fix or improve here, which is not going to work because we're not dealing with the real cause. The way to go beyond this is to go beyond this and not even attempt to do anything here, because all we do is just reinforcing it. But before I go to the real cause and how to go beyond this, let's look at who you really are. Because if you're not your false self, then who are you? So who you really are is what I call the limitless self. In other Eastern philosophies or approaches might call it the real you, the I am, and quantum physics might call it observer, and the identity would be what's observed. And this is the limitless self. That's who you really are, the real you, without all these things that you actually acquired. You were born and then you acquired all of these things here in the identity. It wasn't there from the beginning, but it's something that was put upon you or imprinted upon you later on. So when we take all of that away, what's left is the real you, the limitless self, with your real abilities, your real talents and gifts. You have the full life force. Remember I said the life force disappear as we go through life because of environment, experiences and so on, and we go down in emotional tone. Well, once you start to let go of the glue here that's holding all of this in place, you have more and more life force. You tap into your full power and strength. You have creative power. So the law of attraction, for example, will start to work better because you are now don't have these negatives, just to have a simple word for it, all these negatives in the way from you creating. And you have full clarity and you're aligned, feel that you're on purpose, have meaning and fulfillment. This is your natural state. This is who you are. That's the limitless self. This is where you have those ideas, the inspirations to write a book or start a business or whatever it is, but then the false self comes in and talks you out of it because of the fears and doubts and worries. So let's put this false self away and start tapping into who you really are. That's where all your power is. That's where you can start creating your ultimate life, design your dream life and start living it. So what's in the way? Well, this is the real cause. We'll get into that now. So the real cause, the way out is to deal with the real cause and let go of the charges. Charges are the real cause of all your negative emotions, habits, beliefs, thoughts and limitations, and this is what gives the birth to the false self or the negative, just to use a simple metaphor. Okay, so what is a charge then? A charge is a program. It's like a mind virus that takes over it's a way that you're looking at the world. Between 0 and 7 years old, you developed a lot of charges, and you might develop charges after that as well. But it's basically a strategy for taking perceived threats to our survival, because what you think is a threat when you're 0 to 7 is very different from what you think is a threat when you're an adult. Because as an adult, you have more experience, more knowledge, more wisdom, so you know what's a real threat and what's not a real threat. As a child who's between 0 and 7 doesn't have that experience, so what they perceive as threats are very different. So the purpose of the charge is to survive. The reason the charge came in there, we developed them, is survival mechanisms, so we can survive through life and handle life, basically. And then once we develop the charge, a program, if you want, a mind virus, and then we set it and forget that we did, and these charges are there on autopilot, working day in and day out. And each charge, by the way, also absorbs life force, because majority of the charges, I would say almost, I haven't met a charge yet that has not have a low emotional tone. These charges come from fear, doubt, worries, and simple word negatives again. So an example of that would be as a charge that would be developed. Say that you're 4 years old, you're sitting at the kitchen table, your parents come, and you're sitting at the kitchen table by yourself having juice, and you have a little bit of bread and drinking the juice, enjoying yourself, playing with the bread, making it small pieces, pour some juice on the bread and making small things with it, or messing it around, or whatever you do as a 4-year-old. And then your mom comes into the kitchen and sees you and gets really angry, screams at you, and you as a child are sitting there having fun, enjoying the moment, playing with the juice and the bread, and your mom comes in and screams at you, and you get, of course, you jump up, you get scared, fearful, because they're the ones who are supporting you, your survival, and screaming, loud noises. 4-year-old get scared, you drop the glass on the table, a bit of that glass cuts your leg maybe, and you start to bleed. At the same time, your mom is screaming, and why are you always messing things up? You always mess things up. Look how dirty it is. And then your dad comes in and has a bright red shirt on him, and he screams at you as well. And then the car is coming past by, a black car, and is honking, and all of these things happening simultaneously, and it gets recorded in your physiology as a 4-year-old. All of this gets recorded, and at that moment in time, you start to develop a charge, because now you have to figure out how I can deal with this threat to my survival, because the two people that are giving me survival are screaming at me, so it feels like a threat. I'm fearful and I'm angry at the same time, so I create a charge. Might be a pleasing child charge. Even though I feel angry and everything inside, I still put a small smile on, just so I can survive this situation. And then all of these different things with the red shirt and the honking of the car is all recorded. And then we fast forward 25 years later, you're walking on the street, or you're in an environment that approximates some of those triggers from that 4-year-old event, maybe the honking of the car. So you hear something similar honking now that 25 years later, and you see someone with a red shirt, and someone is screaming at someone else. You're always messing things up. You can overhear it in the background, but it's not conscious. You're not consciously aware of all of this, but it's your unconscious mind is approximating into all these different stimulators, and then boom, your charge gets activated, and for whatever reason, and then you get angry and fearful, but you have no idea why. You just found yourself being angry and fearful, but you have no idea why. But that's because the environment now, 25 years later, approximated what happened as 4-year-old. A red shirt, someone screaming, you're always messing up, and the honking of the car, similar sound. I'm of course simplifying it here, but I hope you get the point. So the charges are very powerful, and another example of that is when you, for example, your mom looks at you a specific way, or someone talks to you with a specific tone of voice, or the boss says something to you, whatever it is, and you get triggered. And then even when you get triggered and you're dramatizing the charge, you get restimulated, or you're dramatizing the charge, so you're acting it out, you're yelling back at your mom, and even though you can feel yourself being in that charge, you might even have awareness that it's happening, but it almost feels like you don't have any choice, you can't do anything about it. And that's the power of a charge. So the charges are extremely powerful, and a lot of and I would say a lot of the decisions that people make, the feelings, the negative feelings, and all of these things are coming from the charges. So once you get to work with the charges and you let them go, you're starting your path to real freedom that I talked about. This is the approach. This is a workable answer. And this is what I discovered back then 4 or 5 years ago. So by dealing with this, all the negatives over here will disappear. And the more we're trying to change, fix, or improve the negatives over here, the more they get reinforced, as I said. So the way out is to deal with the charges. So I hope that makes sense. Looking forward, how do you take this information and take it into